Hi, well, welcome everybody. For those of you who've been following this series of webinars for the 2.1 wallboard release, this is our final one. And thank you if you've attended previous ones. If you haven't, they are all available on our YouTube channel. And I'd like to think we've saved the best till last, because we're going to be talking about the Model Context Protocol MCP, which is really sort of getting into some of the funky kind of AI capabilities. So I know we've got a lot to cover. So I think, without further ado, I'm going to kind of hand it over to John, and he is gonna take you through it.
Perfect. Thank you, Ian. So hi, everyone. If you haven't watched some of our previous webinars, my name is John Kessinger, and I'm our product manager here at Wallboard. And the goal of today's webinar is to introduce a topic that may sound a bit technical, but I'm hoping that I can sort of demystify a lot of what MCP is, what does it mean, what are some of the outcomes that you can get from using it. And then also just sort of break it down and show some examples of how this is something that you can use today. Um, so if you're not familiar with MCP, basically what it stands for is Modern Context Protocol. It is a means of using platforms like Claude, ChatGPT, or even your own AI agent, if that's something that your organization is starting to adopt, where you can actually manage and take actions in a software like Wallboard, for example. So sometimes we'll refer to it as an MCP connector, but basically it's just a means in which AI can understand the API that's behind your software so that it can take actions on your behalf. So just going into a little bit more detail, like I said, in basically MCP more or less, if you've ever used again a platform like Claude or ChatGPT, you may see that they have their own sort of baked in connectors. So if you've ever wanted to sort of manage a Spotify playlist, or you've wanted to check out or plan a trip on bookings.com, you'll notice that they have connectors for those platforms. They also have the ability to add custom connectors. So I'll show you what that process looks like, but that is how we connect Wallboard to these type of platforms. So with that being said, like I said, so far we've integrated with platforms such as Claude, ChatGPT. Also, it's not just specific to those. Again, if your organization already has your own AI agent that you're starting to use or starting to incorporate into your own workflows, then this is also something that you can take advantage of. If you are using platforms like Claude or ChatGPT, this is something that you can use with something as simple as their entry level subscription. I think it's like maybe $20 a month for those type of platforms. So there is a little bit of an investment to sort of use this, but the idea is that hopefully the amount of time that you can save and the things that you're able to do help offset some of those costs, especially when it comes to our partners and more enterprise customers. So just going into a little bit more detail, like I said, of what MCP is, it's basically a means of these AI platforms, with the ability to control what happens within Wallboard and again, take actions on your behalf. There's no real new software you have to learn to make this happen. The idea is that just like how you communicate with AI today, is that you can basically say what you want to achieve in plain English or whatever your preferred language is, and then it will carry out those actions again on your behalf. Now, the beauty of this is that you basically just have to describe your outcome. Previously, before MCP was present, and you were just using Wallboard as it is. You had to do all these steps manually. So if you wanted to achieve something rather complex, you had to know the various steps that it takes to get there. You also need to know the order in which those steps need to take place. You also need to know all the ins and outs, possibly depending on how complex your use case is, to actually carry that all out. So how I see this is it's sort of bridging the gap between a lot of the complexities or some of the more complicated things that we can do in Wallboard. I think it's sort of bringing those to the forefront. And it's lowering the barriers of entry so that anybody can use some of these features. They just need to know what to ask for. So I'll show plenty of examples today, but just know that this isn't just something as simple as, okay, I want to see what devices are going offline, or I want sort of like a health check on what's happening in my environment. That's all certainly possible, but we've actually gone a step beyond those very basic tasks. And what I mean by that is more multi-step tasks. So, for example, maybe we want to allow someone to create an automated content feed. And so, whenever you want to first get into Wallboard and create something like that, you simply just ask Claude or ChatGPT, I want to create an automated AI feed. And it knows that, okay, I need to find a template in the template library. I then need to create an AI data source, which we've covered in one of our previous webinars. I need to put that into a playlist, and then I need to connect that data to the template and then make any customizations like branding, etc., that I need to. So again, this isn't just surface level. I'll show plenty of examples that you can see that, or where you can see how far this is going. And again, I just want to preface, I know I've mentioned this multiple times, but this isn't just AI giving you advice on how to do something. You may be familiar with our AI assistant that is in our platform today, where it helps teach you on how to perform certain tasks, or let's say you have a question on how something works in our system. It's there more so to be an assistant and help you know the next steps to take. In this case, MCP is actually taking those steps on your behalf and carrying out the actual action. So there is a direct benefit, there is a direct outcome that happens at the end of this. It's not simply, okay, I'm getting assistance or guidance from AI, and then I'm physically having to do it myself. The idea is that I ask it for my task, it then carries it out. And then while it's doing that, I can then do something else like answer an email, etc. So before I get into a more technical conversation here, I think it first helps that, how can we visualize what MCP is? How can we see what it's capable of, and actually see it in practice? So before I go into more details on different use cases, and how this can affect our partners and end users, I first just wanted to give you a quick glimpse of what something like this looks like. So as you'll see, there's a connectors section. I think it's called Customize now in Claude, but this is how easy it is to set up MCP. So there is a guide on our knowledge base. You just input this link here. You click Add. It does depend on what server instance you're on, but if you're on our public servers, it should be quite easy to add. In this case, here's an example of where I basically want to onboard an entire portal of devices. Let's say I have a new customer. They have a bunch of, for example, BrightSign devices or LG or Samsung, etc. Well, I have the names of all those devices and I have their serial numbers. So I can pre-register them. I can start setting up permissions. I can start organizing these devices into folders based on where they're located. Um, I can even go beyond that. I can even start updating content. One of our, sort of strong suits in Wallboard is that we're able to deliver a lot of data-driven content. And so when any content is powered by data and it's dynamic, that means that we can start manipulating that data using something like MCP, for example. So as you can see here, I simply said that I wanted to update my food menu, and then it's going to give me some options here on what I can do to update that menu. So do I want to add or remove an item? Do I want to make something out of stock, etc.? And so in this case, because we have templates and such that adapt dynamically, you'll see here that I can simply just ask that, I want to add a Tex-Mex salad and it's 10.99. And then you'll see over here on the right-hand side that once I press enter, it takes just a couple seconds, and then you'll see that it gets added to the menu. So yes, you could manage this in a spreadsheet, but maybe it's easier for you to manage it through a platform like this because you're just simply asking for what you want and it happens. So I just wanted to show off a quick example just so I could show something a little with a little bit more substance and that's tangible. But I quickly wanted to get into how can our user base benefit from this, specifically our reseller partners. While I do think that our end users and our partners can benefit from MCP, I think the biggest benefit initially is going to be with our reseller partners. The reason why I say this is because our reseller partners understand all of the outcomes that are possible and wallboard, or they have a more intimate relationship, let's say, with our software because they use it every day. They've implemented many customers. They understand what's possible. So because of that, they know what to ask MCP so that they can achieve X result. Um, Also, I think why this helps for our reseller partners is because without our partners, it'd be very difficult for us to onboard customers, for them, to make sure that our customers have a great experience when they first get into the platform and get set up, whether that's, they're using digital signage for the first time, or they're coming from a previous content management system and are using Wallboard now. Our partners have a very, very strong impact on our end users. And so because of that, I think that there's many different ways that our resellers can take advantage of this. We just saw an example previously where we showed off a customer onboarding. So for example, instead of having to set up a customer's portal by manually registering their devices, looking for the 4-digit code that appears on the screen and pairing it to the device, you can now use, for example, MCP to register all those devices in advance via their serial number. Uh, in that spreadsheet that we saw earlier, it said where all those devices were located and it gave names for them. Well, based on that information, we can then name the devices. We can then put them in their respective locations folders. We can even apply permissions so that, for example, if we have offices all throughout Texas, let's say Dallas, Houston, etc., maybe I only want to restrict the Dallas users to only be able to see their screens and only allow them to manage that particular part of the wallboard portal. So those things are all possible with MCP, and it can be done extremely quickly. The idea here is that this is something that you can do in minutes as opposed to 45 minutes to an hour. Also, like I said, our resellers have a great impact on the end result or the experience that our end users have. So this could be anything from setting up device alerts. For example, if let's say a device goes offline and someone wants to be notified about it, that's something that MCP can help set up for you. Same with something that we call UI profiles. It limits different parts of our system and hides away UI settings and different features that we have that customer may never use. So we're able to tailor the experience specifically to the end user, but more importantly, we're also able to include a lot of what we call quality of life upgrades, meaning we have a lot of features in the system that, if implemented, can make the customer's life easier. But if you need to apply all of them on day one, you may not want to make that time investment. So the idea here is that because you can do all this much more quickly and much more efficiently, um, I think this is something that will directly benefit our end users because our partners are able to help in that fashion. The other thing that I think is important here is that this reduces the skill gap. We've had, I think anyone knows who has used Wallboard that we have a lot of capabilities, right? We have a content editor that can do a lot of things. We have a lot of different features in the system. One that I mentioned earlier was AI data sources and creating automated content feeds that just update automatically. If a partner didn't watch, let's say, our previous webinar, or an end user didn't watch our previous webinar, they would have to do some self-exploration to learn how to set these things up. Well, if that's something that you just want to implement, now all you have to do is ask MCP, I want to set up an automated content feed. Again, it knows that it needs to set up an AI data source, find a template, combine those together, and then that gets you your end result. So I just think the idea here is that as we continue to implement new features, specifically more advanced ones or ones that may lend themselves better to more enterprise environments, I think these are going to become a lot more accessible to our partners so that they can help implement them for our end users. Additionally, I think that this also improves just the knowledge transfer. So like I said, as we come out with new features, the idea that they can get into the hands of our partners and again, ultimately our end users quicker, that's a huge benefit for us because we come out with a lot of things. We come out with a lot of features that we think will benefit people. And so the quicker we can get those into the hands of an end user and get feedback, that's really important to us. So I think that's also something that is exciting that comes out of this. And last but not least, we have a lot of partners, and I think that this is great, that are very consultative with their customers. So for example, some partners will monitor the devices of a customer. So for example, let's say that the customer has some devices that are going offline. Maybe they need application updates, firmware updates, etc. The idea here is that the partner can be much more attentive. They can simply just enter a prompt that says, hey, can you see, this is my customer, customer XYZ. Can you take a look at their portal to see how their devices are performing? Again, have any of them went offline for an extended period of time? Are some having maybe network issues or are more problematic? So I think this will allow also our partners to be a little bit more attentive without taking up a lot more of their time. So something like this becomes a lot more feasible. And what are examples I would say that directly correlate to that? Now, I know I've already mentioned a couple of these, one of those being onboarding a new customer via a spreadsheet. For example, if a customer has a lot of BrightSigns or LGs or Samsungs or any of the other device types that we have, maybe it makes more sense to have them fill out a spreadsheet of, hey, what are the names of your devices from your previous CMS? What are the serial numbers of those devices? And with that information, the MCP can register those devices. Again, they can assign them to specific locations. They can again also permission them, for example. So this is something that again would have had to be done manually, depending on the size of the customer. This could take anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes. Now it takes less than 5. So I think what's really important to note here is that there's also a scalability is also very important when it comes to this. The more devices and the more endpoints that someone is managing, the more they benefit from something like MCP. Because the idea is that it's carrying out these actions in unison or all at the same time. And so, that's less clicks that you have to do. That's less navigating the portal. You actually don't have to do any of that. You just request what you want. Additionally, building demo portals for customers. We have a lot of partners who, again, are signing on new customers, demoing Wallboard to them. But after they see the software or get a demo, they maybe want to try it out for themselves. When you first get into a Wallboard portal, if you haven't set anything up, it looks barren, it looks blank. There's no predefined templates. There's no folder structure based on the locations that that customer has within their organization. So with just a little bit of information, such as what vertical is this customer under? For example, are they a corporate comms customer? Whenever we create their demo portal, why don't we import corporate comms templates from our template library? Again, if we know their locations and we know, especially AI, especially because it can search the internet and it knows where all these the organization's different offices are, we can start setting up device folders, pre-registered demo devices, and these type of things. And again, it's not a lot of legwork. So I think it's again very beneficial because we can sort of put our best foot forward, or our best foot forward, and create an experience that a customer would expect without, again, a lot of labor being involved. Additionally, I had mentioned something such as UI profiles. The concept of this is that we have a lot of features in the system. And if someone is, for example, just needing to upload images and videos to a playlist, then maybe we can hide some of our other features that we know they won't use. Interactivity, data-driven content, these type of things. Really, any feature that you don't think a customer would use, we can technically hide that from the UI using what we call a UI profile. So even MCP can help set that up. It will ask you, okay, you want to set up a UI profile, or you want to hide certain aspects from the wallboard interface. These are the various things that we can hide. What is your customer actually doing in the system? And then based off that, it will create the profile, assign it to the user, and then the next time they log in, they will have a much more simplified experience. Last but not least, like I said, proactive monitoring. So I had already mentioned this, but again, looking for proactive devices, looking for applications or firmware that's out of date. The idea is to catch the problems before the customer even reports them to you. So it's much better to be proactive, and now there's not really a time cost that's associated with it. This is something that you can do via MCP. So let me show an example here really quickly. So this is the same example that you saw in that quick little snippet at the very beginning, but I wanted to show the full context. I wanted to show you what the process actually looks like whenever you are trying to create something such as let's say you're trying to onboard a customer and you want to register many of their devices. This is exactly what this experience would look like. So again, we have that spreadsheet previously that we saw. It shows the device names, it shows their serial numbers, and it shows the location that those devices are located in. So the idea is if I just simply give it a prompt saying, I want to set up a customer, they have X number of devices. I want you to set up permissions. I want you to register the devices. And then I want you to add maybe templates that are specific to the customer or their vertical. It can do all of that. So you'll see here that I'll enter just a very basic prompt. It's not very lengthy. Um, so you'll see here in just 1 second. Again, it says that I want to create a demo portal. There's my client's name, and I'll go ahead and attach that spreadsheet. And once I press send, you're going to see that Claude starts to think. So first, it accesses our MCP. It's looking at our API to see, okay, you told me to do X, so I'm going to look at Wallboard's API, and I'm going to try to understand the actions that I need to take in the order I need to take those actions in order to carry out the task that you just gave me. And so, again, this may take a little bit of time. You may notice as you first start using MCP, some of these tasks may take 3 to 4 minutes. But again, with bigger tasks, you're saving a considerable amount of time. Again, the idea also is that while you're doing all of this, you can answer an email or do something else. And as you can see, this is the end result. So 50 devices have been registered. They've been put in their specific locations. And so you'll see here in just a moment that this is what the portal looks like now. No more blank demo portals, no more blank portals whenever someone is onboarded. There was templates available. There's all the various locations. And when I click into one, you can see that these are all the devices that are within Austin, for example. So I think that this is just very, very important. The other thing that I want to mention too is this isn't just for just simply adding devices and templates. There's also a permissioning aspect to Wallboard. So it's even setting up those permissions for you. So for example, if I wanted to put myself into the shoes of what someone in Austin would see when they log into Wallboard for the first time, this is what they would see. They would only see their screens, they would only see their contents, etc. And the idea is you didn't need to know how to do all of this within Wallboard. You didn't know all the settings you had to check. Again, the order in which you needed to do things. You simply just asked for what you wanted the outcome to be, and so that's what we see here. I will say it did 50 devices at once here. The fact that it was able to do this in under 5 minutes is a little bit mind-boggling because to actually carry that out in Wallboard, setting up permissions very granularly, finding the right templates, etc., adding the devices, this would take a considerable amount of time. Again, it can now be done in 5 minutes or less. I'll show one more example. Previously, we talked about automated content feeds using our AI data sources that we introduced into Wallboard. You can also even see you can misspell automated content feed, and you'll still get a good result. So I didn't mention anything or need to know what AI data sources are. I just heard that Wallboard can deliver automated content feeds. So now it's going to start carrying out this action. And there's no sped up footage here. I wanted to show you what a raw result looks like and what the process actually looks like. So you can see here that Claude's thinking through the process just like before. You'll also even see as it's doing this, it's also asking questions as it goes through this process. So for example, okay, you want me to make an automated content feed, but what's it about? In this case, I could have chose world news, but we're going to choose some positive world news for the sake of the webinar today. So when I go ahead and input that, it's again going to start carrying out the task. Now, as this is happening in the background, I want to mention one thing. MCP, this is something that these AI platforms, the tools that they provide, and even what they're capable of, they're also developing new things every single week. They're continuing to improve on how they can interface with software platforms via MCP. So as they're doing this, we're doing this as well. So I would definitely say that this is an emerging technology. This is something that is getting better and better over time. So if let's say this is something you try today and it's not able to do quite what you want, maybe there's other, a certain process that we can tell it to go through. But we believe over time that this is something that will just improve again as these AI platforms improve and as we improve our MCP connector as a whole. So we're getting towards the end of the process here. You can see that it's actually created the playlist. And then as you can see, It's then going to provide me a summary of what it just did. So as you can see, it said it created a playlist, added a slide to that playlist. It even connected the data feed that we just made to the template. So as you'll see here, when I click on templates, I can then go and preview the playlist. And then this is the end result. So as you'll see, it's gonna, again, just like what our AI data sources provide, it's an automated content feed. So this is something that will run continuously. It will update every single day. You could have it update once a week. It's completely up to you and what you prompt. But the idea is once you've set this up, this isn't something that you have to keep nurturing. This is something that just continues to run. And it's just one more piece of fresh content that you can add to your playlist. So if you get a little behind on managing your content, there will always at least be something that is up to date and continues to show fresh content that didn't show the day before. So we'll just have it go through a couple more results here, and then we'll move on to the next examples. Perfect. All right. So going one step further, we talked about how this benefits our partners, but how does this benefit our end users? Like I said, our partners are, the experience that our customers get is a reflection of, the service that our partners can provide and how knowledgeable they are on the platform. And so we've been very thankful for that. But I think there are going to be some end users that want to use this directly themselves. I think that the biggest benefits will probably happen for end users that have larger deployments. So the more devices you have, the quicker you can do things that otherwise would have required you to navigate through the software, or actually, do the physical clicks and walk through the process. Um, so if you have, like, let's say 10 screens or less, you can still benefit from this. But some tasks definitely are quicker by just simply clicking through the software. So that's when I say scale is important. The more actions and the more screens or content that you need to affect, um, the better the MCP will be for you, because again, it's carrying out multiple actions at the same time that is just physically not possible by clicking through the software. So the first thing, again, and that some of these will overlap between, what I discussed about how this benefits our partners. But the biggest thing I think for our end users is that this reduces the skill gap, right? In the same way that we were able to reduce the skill gap for our partners, we expect the same for our end users, right? If we're able to allow our partners to do more things, then ultimately we think that's going to trickle down to the end user. But again, the end user can use this directly themselves. It's not something that has to be managed through a partner. If you have a Claude or a ChatGPT account, you can use the Wallboard MCP connector. But the main thing is that you can do this with less time. So uh, I think this is a common pain point, definitely within digital signage, is that typically the person responsible for the signage, it's not typically their main job. They may be in IT and may be responsible for managing the infrastructure, or the person may be in internal comms or marketing, and they manage the website, social media accounts, the company blog, different materials that the company sends out. So digital signage may be their fourth, fifth, or even sixth responsibility that they've been assigned. So with that, their time is limited. They don't want to spend a lot of time managing a signage platform. So if we can do things faster than manually navigating through the software, then I think that this can be a huge benefit for end users. Additionally, it also helps with managing your devices. So as I said previously, yeah, it's great to know the health of your environment. Still is possible for an end user to ask, okay, which devices are going offline, which ones are offline more than others, which one needs updates, etc. But instead of just leaving it at that, you could actually say, okay, well, if let's say 30 out of my 50 devices are not up to date or need to be updated, I could just ask it to do that and it will do it on my behalf. So again, it's not just, it's telling you what's happening. You're actually able to take action. Additionally, we didn't just leave this at managing devices. I think you even saw in that sneak peek where we were managing a menu board, that we can also manage content. I think in the very early stages, there's two things that we're focusing on mostly when it comes to managing content with MCP. I think a lot of people, when they hear about AI and a signage platform, the first thing that comes to mind is, ooh, I can create content with AI. And that is true to a certain degree, but I think there are definitely steps to this. Our first two steps are the ability to allow AI or MCP to be able to manage data-driven contents. So think of event reader boards, tenant directories, menu boards, anything that sort of keeps a similar layout. Yes, it may be dynamic, but ultimately it's data-driven. For example, a tenant directory may show what the company's name is, what floor they're located on, the suite they're located in, etc. And so AI is actually able to manage this information quite well. So this is something that we're focusing on initially. Also, at the same time, if you've used templates within our template library, you may have ran into something called our quick editor. It's basically fields within a template that the customer is able to easily customize within our simplified editor. Well, MCP can also adjust those. So, in just a very simple example, imagine you are a restaurant, or you have a series of restaurants and you have daily specials that you put on. So, for example, on Monday, maybe the cheeseburger meal is your special. It's only available at lunchtime. It's 10.99, and you want to throw up an image that matches that. But you want to do that for every single day of the week. So on Tuesday, you have a different special. On Wednesday, you have a different special, etc. So what you're actually able to do is create a playlist or update an existing one, add that template multiple times for each day of the week that you want to show your specials. It will schedule it for that specific day of the week, and then it will even quick edit it. So again, it will adjust the name of the special, the price, the image that's associated with it. Additionally, um, it could also even change the branding. So if you gave it your website, it's able to see, okay, these are the primary hex codes you use on your website. Therefore, we're going to use those same colors to then customize the template based on what is quick editable. So this is something that we're going to continue to build upon. We do have some templates on our platform right now that can be managed in this way, but this is something that we, again, want to expand upon so that there's a plethora of options or templates that you can use to do exactly what I just described. And last but not least, I'll actually have a live demo for this example that I'm about to mention, but generating proof of play reports. Um, think of like digital out of home sort of setups or environments where basically someone is managing hundreds of screens. They have hundreds of advertisers that they're working with, and daily they're having to go into the software and update the different ads that play on their screens, when they're scheduled, when they need to be removed from the screens, etc. MCP can actually carry out those tasks, but I think what's really interesting is the ability to generate proof of play reports. So, for example, maybe I only want to see the proof of play results for a certain location or a certain set of screens. Or maybe I want to see how many times a certain advertiser's assets have played. I want to see how many times they've played, and I want to see how long for. Now, yes, you can use Wallboard today to do this actually quite elegantly. We have an entire proof of play section where you can query through this data, generate a CSV with all the raw data in it, and then even visualize it in our graphs and charts and so forth. But in this case, MCP can actually query for all of this just based on what you're telling it. And then it can also even generate that Excel file or that PDF report that shows all these proof of play analytics. This is a huge time saver. Again, this is something that takes less than 4 minutes, and I'll even show you. And probably would have taken someone at least an hour. One for collecting the data, but more so putting that into a nice readable format within a document such as an Excel doc or a PDF. AI platforms are quite good at doing those specific tasks. And so again, these examples are very closely linked to what we just talked about. So again, updating data-driven contents through conversation, that's something that end users can do today. Menu boards, tenant directories, event schedules that may show in a venue. I'll show an example here in a moment about that. Update playlist with editable templates. I had mentioned the weekly or the daily specials for a restaurant. Also, bulk content changes. This is where I think it's really interesting. If a lot of times people will have a different playlist assigned to every single screen. Or maybe they have 10 different playlists that they're managing in their system. Well, let's say that you have a holiday that's coming up and you want to actually assign a specific template or asset to all of your screens. Um, Instead of you having to click into each playlist, drag in that template and schedule it, you can actually just tell MCP or Claude or ChatGPT that, hey, this is the asset or template I want to use. Assign it to all my screens. It needs to be scheduled at this particular time. And again, it will carry out that action within a couple of minutes. Those are now clicks that you don't have to do while you're doing something else. Also, identify problematic devices. I've already mentioned a couple examples of this, so I won't go into further detail, but a good example would be looking for things like when a device went offline, what needs updates, or a very common example we see is, devices going off the network, for example. So that's something also that you could see when sort of pulling up those metrics. And then also proof of play report, which again, I'll show here at the end. So real quick, I know we saw a glimpse of the food menu and our ability to be able to manage something like this, but I'll just go ahead and show off the entire experience here. So again, we have Claude over here on the left. We have our menu board over here on the right. We have templates that can update dynamically. Again, we have the item name, the price, and the description for each item that appears on the menu. And the idea is that this list can shrink or it can sort of expand depending on how many items you have in it. So I can ask something such as, can you help me update my food menu? And you don't actually have, once you ask this question, you actually don't have to know the next steps or what Wallboard is capable of, let's say. It will actually lead you in the right direction. So you'll even see here, I have some different options that I can choose from. Do I want to add or remove menu items from the menu? Do I want to set an item out of stock? Maybe I have a typo or I need to change the item of the name or the price or the description. Maybe I even need to check inventory levels if that's something that we're keeping record of. So let's say in this example, I actually want to add a new item, such as the Tex-Mex salad. It's $10.99 and we have 10 available. You'll see here within a couple seconds, over here on the right, at the very bottom, the Tex-Mex salad is now added. But again, there were other options that I could have done. So for example, I could have also said that maybe the Greek salad is now out of stock. So I can simply just type that, hey, the Greek salad is now out of stock. And then it will remove it from the menu and set its inventory level to 0. So honestly, this is a product of us continuing to improve upon our internal data sources in Wallboard, or what we call spreadsheets or Wallboard spreadsheets. These can now be managed through MCP through just simply giving it a request. Also, I want to show where this is potentially headed. So as you can see, I also said, can you change the background color of the menu to light green? And as you're about to see, it's going to change on the right-hand side. Now, I understand that this is not something that you just change on a whim. However, but when I was talking about that you can bring in templates from our system and you can customize them to your branding, this is just an example. As we continue to add more features to the system, such as branding preferences, etc., just imagine that you can basically add a template from our template library. It then modifies it, at least the content that is shown inside it or the data. And then it even says, okay, I now want to rebrand it towards my branding preferences. It carries all of that out within a single action. So um, this is just the beginning, I would say. This is certainly something that we want to continue expanding upon, especially as we start introducing more templates that are compatible with MCP. But I think that that just kind of shows you a glimpse of what's coming and what's possible today. This is another example. So this would be an event reader board. Let's say you're an event venue, maybe in hospitality or what have you, and you have a list of all the events today. Again, this is all data that could be held within Wallboard spreadsheets. Yes, some people use Outlook calendars for these type of things. You could even use MCP to schedule an Outlook calendar, and because we integrate with Outlook, that could be even reflected in the content. And so maybe I want to add a new event. So here you'll see in a second that I typed that, can you help me add a meeting to my meeting schedule in Wallboard? And just like before, we're actually going to guide the user through the experience. So instead of the user guessing what we're capable of, we tell you directly. So if you want to book a meeting, we need the meeting title. We need the group that it's associated with. We need the room that it's associated with so those people know where to go. The date that it's happening on, when's the start and end time, etc. So you could see here that I put that there's an event today called the Late Night Social. The group that it's for is Wallboard, and it's going to be in the Coral Room, and it runs from 9 to 10 p.m. And so here you are within a few seconds. It now appears at the bottom of the reader board. So again, this is what we call data-driven content. There's certain use cases that this is more applicable for that I've already mentioned, um, but this is sort of let's say the first stage. Because we have a very data-driven platform, this is something that MCP actually lends itself quite well to. Okay, now let's go ahead and get into the live example. So what I wanted to do for this example is I actually wanted to show off an example that's relatively quick and has a huge payoff. So this is one of our partners. They're called Use Scoreboards. Basically, their whole concept is that they have an ad-supported model for baseball fields and complexes. So if you can imagine where there's baseball fields near you, uh, uh, probably going to be if you're only in the US, you will see these. But if you have baseball fields near you, almost every small community has one, or bigger cities have several complexes with many different fields and scoreboards on them. The idea is that Use Scoreboards provides a scoreboard through Wallboard. It can be managed through an application on their phone to control the score. And the idea behind Use Scoreboards is, like I said, it's an ad-supported model. So let's say that a batter strikes out, for example. Well, now another batter needs to come up to the plate, and it's their turn to bat. Well, in between that, there's about maybe 20 seconds that someone can show ads. So whenever someone registers an out, let's say on the controller or the scoreboard controller, it then triggers an ad on the scoreboard. So that's their whole concept. And so they deal with hundreds of advertisers in many different markets. They're managing hundreds of screens. And so in this example, what I wanted to show is what the process now looks like for them when they generate their proof of play reports. As you can imagine, they need to submit quarterly or monthly proof of play reports to their advertisers to show that their ads are playing. And previously in Wallboard, they had to use our analytics section. Now, it's great. It's a very nice experience, especially with our latest updates in 2.0. However, those clicks do take time and you have to know what you're doing. So what I'll show you in this example is how I can simply ask that I want the proof of play data for a specific set of fields in a specific location, and it's going to gather all that data, but it goes a step further. And not only does it gather the data that I want it to, it also puts it into a nice Excel file and could even generate a PDF that I could directly send to an advertiser. So I know right now this is something that you have to do manually, but this is a clear-cut example of how you can save, for example, an hour where you would have had to manually do all this and have a staff member do it. Again, not to say that you don't need a staff member to do this now, because you do have MCP, and someone does have to prompt for what they need. But again, this saves them a considerable amount of time and ultimately allows Use Scoreboards to be a lot more transparent with their advertisers. So I just think that this is a really interesting concept, and I'm excited to show it off. So let's go ahead and look here in the Oklahoma City folder. You're going to see that there's this park called Norman Reeves, and they have 4 fields at this complex. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. And these play ads all of the time. Again, whenever someone's at the field, there's a game going on, ads are showing whenever there's slight downtime, when they're changing in between games, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go into Claude here, and I'm going to say, can you provide me with a proof of play report for Use Scoreboards and all the devices at Norman Reeves? That's the complex or the screens that we were just looking at. And so I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And I will note this is going to take about 3 to 4 minutes. Again, though, there's a significant ROI if this previously took an hour. I think this also gets more interesting as time goes on, because as things like agents and these things become more prominent, and these AI companies start coming out with these sort of tools or platforms for controlling agents, agents will also be using tools like MCP. So that is something where it could be fully automated. Let's say we gather these reports every week or every month, and then we send them directly to our advertisers based on what it produces. In this case, of course, I told it to gather proof of play data. And because of that, the first question it's asking me is, okay, how far back would you like me to get this data for? In this case, I actually just want to say I want to see the data that's from the past 7 days or the last week. So I'm going to go ahead and select it here. And then we'll see that it's going to start carrying out the task. Now, what's interesting about this is you can actually see what it's doing in the background. So you could sit here and you could watch the process, take place. However, again, the idea is that you are ideally not having to sit here and watch this. You could then go start answering an email, etc. But this is an opportunity where this task can be carried out for you directly. So we'll give it a few moments here. It looks like I'm having an issue here, which of course would happen in a webinar, even though I've tested it many times before doing this. So we'll just give it a couple of seconds here. Just give me 1 second here. Let me re-log in. I think I accidentally logged myself out here, so my apologies. Just takes a couple of seconds to get logged back in. Okay, we're good. Okay, here we go. So I can actually give you a first-hand glimpse of what this looks like. Give me 1 second. Let me share my screen. So now that I'm logged in, you are going to see that there's this option here under connectors where you can see the actual scoreboards connector. This is just connected to your wallboard instance. So if you add wallboard, for example, you'll see it here. I just have this checked, and now we'll have it carry out the task one more time. So again, we'll be able to see it as it's going through the process. It's going to ask me for the date range, just like before. We'll quickly say the last 7 days. And again, it's going to start going through the process. There we go. So you can now understand, or you can see that it's even looking within the Chicago time zone. As we said, these are located within Oklahoma City, so it even understands where the devices are located, the time zone it's in, and how that correlates to the date range. You'll also even see too, as it starts going through the process, even if it runs into an issue, it is able to self-correct. The issue that I had previously is that I simply just wasn't logged in and didn't have the right connector selected. So it will continue to do this. Again, like I said, it does take 3 to 4 minutes to carry this action out, but I can promise you it is significantly quicker if you'll have to do this manually. You'll actually even see with the end result that the amount of data that it's able to collect and represent in an Excel file is actually incredibly convenient and would take me much, much longer. So it's actually gathered the data. We can even see here that it's starting to build the Excel file. And it will also even do some calculations. So I could even say, like, for example, when we present proof of play data, it's usually presented within seconds. But you'll see here that it also does some calculations to show how often or how much something has played in minutes. So as you can see here, it says that it's went through and it's collected all of that data. Over here on the right-hand side, let me just expand this a bit. This is our Excel document. And when you first look at this, you're like, oh, that's all it generated. Well, that wasn't very helpful. It shows how many ads played across all the devices, how long it played for across all those devices. But this is where it starts getting interesting. If I click on another tab in this spreadsheet, you can see that it's even showing me these are all the channels or ad campaigns that they have active at that location. You can even see the advertisers that are associated with those channels. So you can see here that we have Casey's, Popeyes, etc. And I can see how many times those played at these specific locations. So if I open this up here, you can see that this is the device name or the field name, and it says how many times different advertisements from this ad campaign have played, how long in total has it played, and then for how many seconds in total also it has played if you need very, very granular details like that. And now where this even goes further is it didn't just query across, okay, I want to grab data for all of your different ad campaigns that you have present at these locations. It's also able to break down the information by advertiser. So if I'm coming in and I know that our premier advertisers are Casey's and Norman Air, I can quickly see that, well, that's correct. Their assets are playing more than everyone else's. They've played more times. The total play time is more. And maybe that's due to because they have more ad campaigns, or maybe they're saturated higher in our channel or campaign system that we have. But this, I think, is where it goes pretty far. I can even see how many of these specific assets have played. Whoops, sorry. How many of these specific assets have played, how many times they've played at a particular field or location, and then how many times that asset has showed in total. So, for example, here, I could see that there is a Popeyes ad that has played 2,754 times over the past week. And it's played, this is the total time it's played for. So, doing something like this, again, gathering the data is one thing, but then putting that into a readable format within an Excel sheet, that's completely different. And this saves you a ton of time that you can consolidate both of these processes in one with a simple prompt. Um, so this is just one example. It's something that I wanted to show off live because I think it has a big payoff. But if this is something that you're interested in, please reach out to us. I will say our MCP connector, it is in its beta phase. Again, these AI platforms are continuing to develop their own tools, and the results that we get with our MCP connector are directly affected by new updates that come out within these AI platforms. So with that being said, this is going to continue to improve over time, but we also want to improve things on our end over time. So again, this is something that's in its beta phase. But if you do want to be an early adopter, this is something that you can use today. On our knowledge base, on our knowledge base, we do have a guide that you can follow to connect, for example, our MCP connector to Claude. It's kind of what you saw at the very beginning of this webinar or this particular session. But if you do have some more specific questions, I will say that you can reach out to us at support@wallboard.us if you are in the US region or North America region. If you are in Europe, you can reach out to support@wallboard.info and we can point you in the right direction. So again, if you want to be an early adopter, if this is something that you think can be beneficial based on what you saw today, please reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction on how you can take advantage of something like this, and also how you can achieve the results that you're looking for, again, based on what you've seen today. Um, it's a huge benefit to us. We really appreciate your feedback. So again, if this is something that you do want to use and you start using, we definitely want to receive feedback and what your overall experience has been. So um, that's all I've got for this webinar today, but I do appreciate everyone's time. I think this is very exciting for us and is something that we sort of see as the future, especially as AI agents and these type of things start coming more prominent. But yeah, um, thank you so much for your time. And if there's any questions, we'll now start looking at the Q&A and see if there were any questions that came up. I'm looking at these questions here. So we have a question here. It says, would this be able to set up wireless access on devices? Um, I don't believe, I think this is very device dependent. So this isn't something that we can do today with MCP, just because it's not a feature that we have in the system today. So if something's not a feature that we have in the system today, then unfortunately we can't do it with MCP because we have to have the feature in place for it to be able to do that. Um, so I would just keep that in mind. Let's see, we had another question here. Where specifically is the setup guide? So yeah, I can point you in the right direction here. Give me 1 second, I'll pull it up. So if you have ever been to our knowledge base, this is it. So as you can see right up here at the top, you're going to see docs.wallboard.us. You can go over here to, you'll see over here on the right-hand side that there's this drop down. Hover over API, and then you'll see MCP integration. From here, you're then going to go into uh, the Claude AI setup. And this is it. So it is so quick to set this up, or at least set up the connector. So it should literally take less than a minute if this is something that you want to do. But you can follow this guide here. Again, if you reach out to us at either of our support emails at support@wallboard.us if you're in the US, or support@wallboard.info if you're in Europe or surrounding regions, we can point you in the right direction, especially if you're using other platforms like ChatGPT, for example. Also, there is a specific setup guide. So if you're a little bit more technical and you're not necessarily using the Claude instance that I showed you in my browser, maybe you're using um, Claude Code, for example, which is a little bit more technical, like I said. There is a specific guide on this as well. So it works with both forms of the Claude platform. Uh, let's see here. It says, we have another question. Would you be able to revert from a prompt? Let's see here. Would you be able to revert from a prompt and live preview your prompt before applying? Yeah, so I think I'd have to have more information on what you're referring to. But the idea is that you can, I mean, whenever you're putting in your prompt, I mean, you're typing it out and you can preview it. I'm not sure what you mean. Are you saying that before we actually apply the changes in the software, you can preview what the changes look like? Unfortunately, that is not possible if that's what you're talking about. As soon as you make a request via a prompt, it's then carried out in our software. So I will say, this is something, like, as you're first starting to use this, you should be attentive of what is going on. We do have different access controls though in the system. So let's take the use scoreboard example where we were just reading proof of play data. In Wallboard, you can actually now select if you are using something like MCP, you can say whether a user has read and write access or just read only access. So meaning I wouldn't be able to restart a device or anything like that through MCP if I only had read-only access on that youth scoreboard instance that you just saw. I would just simply be able to look at the proof of play data, maybe look at device data, and then create reports from that. Or do other things. Maybe I just need to see what's going on in my environment, etc. You know, if I have some campaigns or ad campaigns that are starting to expire and we're running out of ads to play, that is also something that you could detect if you have read-only access. So there are varying permissions if you're a little hesitant on that. Is this going to work as I intended? Is it maybe going to do something that I don't want it to do? I mean, the good thing is as it's actually carrying out the process, you can view it happening in real time in the conversation window. It says what it's doing, and you can always stop it in the middle of it in case it somehow misinterprets what you're doing, or what you want it to do. But at least in our testing and what we've experienced, that's typically not a problem because unless you told it to do something specifically with your screens, it's not really going to attempt to manage those or hallucinate in that way, let's say. Okay, it says, can wallboard only perform tasks that we can do manually in can MCP only perform tasks that we can do manually in wallboard? Example, can I use it to set up a scheduled process to refresh content on a group of screens? Um, it depends on what platform you're using. So as I perceive it is, yes, you could use Claude today to schedule content to appear or refresh on screens at a certain time. But that requires you to physically go into Claude or again ChatGPT and actually start, typing out whatever those instructions you are that you want it to do, and then it will carry out that action. But some of these platforms, for example, I know ChatGPT Codex is a good example. Again, it's sort of the Claude code version. So Claude has regular Claude that most people are familiar with, and then there's Claude Code, which is a little bit more technical. ChatGPT has something called Codex, and what they've implemented is something called automations, so that if you want something to happen routinely, and then another example I mentioned previously was if I want to grab proof of play reports every Friday for all my advertisers, it could actually carry out those processes without you actually having to type it out physically and then come to Claude every time you want to perform that action. So if that's what you mean when you're talking about more of like an automation, that is possible, in something like Codex, for example, from ChatGPT. I will say for some of those more automated things, we are sort of at the mercy of what these AI platforms have recently developed. So if they don't have a means of doing automations without you physically typing something into the prompt chat, then that may not be something you are able to do right now. But from what I've seen, and from what we've sort of gotten the feeling from, is that this is sort of the next step that these AI platforms are pursuing, and we think that's why ChatGPT included this in their version of Codex very recently. Okay, that was a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us at either of our support emails. And we'd be happy to help you along or answer any questions like we got in the chat of, is this possible, or I want to do this, can I maybe, automate this to some degree? That's something that we'd be happy to help with. So thank you so much for your time, everyone. And we really appreciate you attending our webinar today.
And I just want to kind of add our thanks to John, because over the sort of webinars, I know there's a huge amount of work that goes in behind the scenes to make them as informative and as seamless as they are. If you've got colleagues that want to watch, they'll either be on our YouTube or you will get a link after this event. But yeah, it's been a great series, and yeah, just thank you so much, John, for all your efforts that you put in. So yeah, and thanks to everyone who's taken the time to kind of join us. So yeah, on that note, we shall say have a great rest of the day, depending on where you are, and all the very best.
Thank you.